Good morning. Welcome to our 2020 International Women's Day celebration. I'm Vanessa White. Good morning. Deputy Director of NASA's Johnson Space Center. And I want to thank all of the women and the men who came out and are watching on Ustream. International Women's Day is celebrated on March 8th. It is a global day celebrating the achievements and accomplishment of women all around the world, and it's also a day that marks a call to action for accelerating women's equality. This day has occurred for more than a century, with the first gathering in 1911. Today, International Women's Day belongs to all groups. IWD is not a country, a group, or an organization. It belongs to us, all of us. In some countries, it's a day when women are given gifts to honor them for their contributions and achievements. I saw some goodies outside in the lobby, so those will be our gifts. And I want to thank Starport for giving us that gift. Thank you, Debbie. So this year's International Women's Day celebration in the U.S. is very special because we're also celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of women's right to vote. Yes. So I have on I voted sticker here, and I want to tell you that because of travel, I was not able to vote early, and I did not cast my ballot until 11:15 p.m. last night. And there were a lot of people that were in the line, and everyone understood that we were standing there because other people had fought for the right for us to vote. And we were somewhat patient as we waited. But we're very grateful to the suffragists who actually marched and fought for women to have the right to vote. Also, this year's celebration is particularly special for us here at NASA as we remember the life of Katherine Johnson. Katherine Johnson passed last week. Johnson was a mathematician, a trailblazer in the quest for racial equality. And her accomplishments are much to be championed and excited about. If you don't know who Katherine Johnson was, there was a best-selling book and a movie called Hidden Figures about her life. And there's a beautiful portrait outside, along with the other portraits that are in the lobby, for you all to take pictures with. But I would like for us to just take a moment to celebrate Mrs. Johnson and all that she did as she contributed to the missions that put the first woman, that put John Glenn into orbit, and as we work and our accomplishments as women today, as we're going to put and have been putting our women and men successfully into space, carrying on that legacy. And we're looking forward to Artemis, when we're going to put the first woman and the next man on the moon. So, yes. So we're going to hear from some phenomenal women today. And also, we want you to go out to the lobby. As I mentioned, there's an art gallery out there with powerful images of women from across our center here in Houston and White Sands Test Facility. And we want us to, be inspired by these women and to be excited about the work that each of us do every day. So please make sure you go by, see the art gallery, and I have the pleasure of now introducing Miss Elizabeth Bloom. Elizabeth is the chair of our Women Excelling in Life and Leadership and Elizabeth is going to go and come and continue with the program. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Vanessa. Today, we are fortunate to have an esteemed panel of women that will inspire us from their own personal stories. The collective work of this panel contributes to the success of the center and the agency. The first speaker today will be Beth Fisher. She's the SAIC Director of Program Management and Business Development. Our next speaker is Joy Kelly, She is the Vice President and General Manager of Jacobs. After that, we'll have Pam McVeigh, Dr. Pam McVeigh. She's the Manager of Structural Integrity for the ISS program for Boeing. And following Pam, we'll have Carol Weber from Lockheed. Carol is the Director and the Deputy Program Manager of Orion DDT&E. And after Carol will be Sunny. So, yeah, Sunny, sorry. Does everybody know Sunny? All right, okay. International Women's Day is an opportunity to recognize that we are all parts of a whole, and our individual actions, conversations, behaviors, and mindsets impact our larger society. Today, as a united organization, both contractors and civil servants, we are here to celebrate those who lead and inspire all of us at JSC as we support the agency's missions. So without further ado, Beth Fisher.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm gonna bump this up a little bit, maybe not. I think it's okay. Okay. I'm really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you today and to be on this panel with all these great colleagues and friends and women. So I'm just going to tell you my story. So it was mid-January up in northern Ohio some years ago, and I was a co-op student for General Motors at a plant in Elyria, Ohio. I was driving from my parents' home, which is about 35 miles away, to the plant at 9 p.m. at night. It was snowing, it was blowing, and I had to be to the plant at 11 p.m. because I was the third shift maintenance dispatcher for the plant. And so I left early to make sure that I got there by 11, and an hour and 45 minutes later, white-knuckled, driving through the whiteout conditions on Route 2, I finally made it to the plant. I walked in the front door of the plant, the security guard was there. He's like, "How are you doing this evening, Beth?" And I sat down and cried. And I said, "I made it. I am not going to spend the rest of my life working in this Ohio winter conditions." And he said, "I get you. You're good. You're fine." Went on and finished out my shift that night. But that day was a defining moment in my life when I decided I was going to look for opportunities to work outside of the automotive industry, which I really loved, but to find something that was in the southern part of the country. So 6 months before I graduated from Kettering University, I applied to NASA at the Kennedy Space Center, and I was fortunate enough to be accepted. And so I moved down to Florida, and I got to work in the payload processing division at the Kennedy Space Center. And it was a brand new world, a completely brand new world. New acronyms, new words, completely new environment, but it was warm and it was beautiful. And I got to see launches and had some just absolutely fantastic mentors and coworkers that I spent time with there in the payloads organization. I asked them a lot of questions, trying to understand the NASA language, and I remember one day walking across the parking lot with a colleague of mine, and I'm like, okay, this is gonna sound really stupid, but what is real time? Is there fake time? Is there unreal time? What does that mean? He's like, it's not a stupid question, I get it, and he explained it to me. I'm like, thank you so much. So just one example of like just coming into a different culture and trying to understand the work and the people and the lingo. While I was there, a couple of years after I was working as an engineer, I was asked if I wanted to be a bubba for our director of payloads, and I'm like, okay, I am in the South, being asked to be a bubba. But what that meant was I got to job shadow our director for payloads for 6 months and see what he did, spend every day with him. I even got to travel here to Houston for several reviews and to see how all of those went. And I really, really enjoyed that experience. It was fantastic. He was a great mentor. And while I was here at JSC, I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of folks in the space station organization. And then an opportunity came up to come here to JSC for a year to do a rotational assignment in the ISS program office. And I thought, well, that would be great. I'd get to see another center and spend some time here in Houston, and then go back to Florida. Well, that was over 20 years ago, and I'm still here. It was a fantastic experience in the ISS program office. Again, great team, great mentors, great peers, and both contractor and civil servants that I worked with. Very exciting time in the late 90s with the ISS coming together and first construction. So I spent several years in the ISS program office as a launch package engineer, and then a launch package manager, and then I was offered an opportunity to go work in center operations, which I thought, okay, roads and commodes, and yes, thank you to my center ops friends who are here. Roads and commodes, that's different, but let me apply and see if this works out, and it did. So I went over to center ops, and what an amazing organization. I mean, you learn so much about what it takes to make the center run, how to keep the lights on, how to keep the air conditioning going, water leaks, roof leaks, dealing with an aging infrastructure. I got an amazing appreciation walking in those shoes for 6 years in the center operations organization. And that's part of my message to y'all today is, when you have an opportunity, whether it's a different role in your current organization, a different project, a different organization, take that opportunity to go walk in those shoes and learn what it's like to be in that group. And you bring a lot of knowledge and experience back to your home organization or wherever you go from there. From the center ops organization, I went to the engineering directorate. And again, fantastic experience, huge organization supporting all the human spaceflight groups here at JSC and across the agency. Fantastic, relationships between the civil servants and the contractors. We really, really are one team. And another thing that I think I've learned throughout my career is, just mutual respect for every single person here. Everybody is here because they want to work for NASA. If it's somebody who's, taking care of the, checking your badges as you come in the gate, to somebody who's running, one of the most important human spaceflight programs, everybody's here because they believe in NASA. And we're all one team with one vision and one mission. And I think if you have respect for individuals, colleagues, peers, civil servants, contractors, gender, race, doesn't matter. We're all focused on the mission. We're all focused on the team. That's how we accomplish things. So from engineering, I spent about 6 years in engineering, and then I was offered an opportunity to go out into private industry. And I had always wanted to do that, even though I had worked for General Motors. I really wanted to do some work in private industry with the aerospace community. So I did that. I've worked for several large businesses and helped form a startup company. All of those experiences, again, have been fantastic and have helped shape where I want to go and what I want to do with my career. I will say you have a completely different perspective when you're in industry than when you're on the government side, when an RFP comes out. And when you're on the civil servant side and you get to generate RFPs, you have no idea how industry reacts to those. And the same when you're on industry side, you have no idea about the amount of work that goes into putting those RFPs together. So it's great to have that appreciation on both sides of the fence. Into what goes on, in each organization, and to bring that to your team and say, hey, you guys don't understand. Over, at JSC, they're working in the bunkers and they're putting these things in there, spending hours. And yeah, this may not make sense, but we need to ask some questions and get some clarifications. So again, different perspectives, walking in different shoes, and having that appreciation. I think is really advantageous. And again, it can be within your own group, it can be in different organizations, but take the opportunity to learn and to challenge yourself. And that goes to DARE. So this DARE, Unite, Explore theme that Mark has here at JSC, which I think is fantastic. For me, DARE has been accepting new challenges and getting out of your comfort zone. And I think that falls right into Unite. And if you can bring those different perspectives from your different experiences to your team, share that you've walked in those other shoes, it just helps to unite the team. Oh, wow, I didn't think about it that way. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, maybe they do really have a challenge in that area. Maybe we should be a little bit more understanding. And then finally, Explore is to take what you've learned in those other areas and maybe try the way you solved a problem in your new organization or on your new project. Bring those ideas, bring those experiences, and explore ways to maybe solve problems or address new challenges. The glass ceilings, I did want to address, and I think that was kind of funny. I was running through this a little bit last night with my 15-year-old son, and I said, well, I want to talk about glass ceilings. He's like, what's that? I said, exactly. And I said, well, really? I said, you know, Brandon, for me, it hasn't, I've never experienced it. And I said, that speaks volumes about this center and about this agency. If you work hard, if you treat people with respect, the glass ceiling isn't there. You work as a team with one vision and one mission, the glass ceiling it disappears. So I really, I have a lot of people to thank for my journey, my mentors, my colleagues, my parents, my wonderful parents who have supported me throughout my career, and you know, gave me great opportunities and never said you can't be an engineer because you're a girl. They were just always there in my corner, and I got a text from my mom about a half an hour ago. She said, good luck, I know you're gonna do great. So they're always here for me, and thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with y'all today, and go out and do great things.
All right, so I'm Joy Kelly, and I am going to do something a little bit different. So I want to start with, my talk is how to have an awesome life. And it is to put self-doubt on the shelf. So we put the elf on the shelf, put self-doubt on the shelf. It can be really short. So show of hands, how many in this room have ever felt self-doubt? I'd be surprised if anybody in this room did not raise your hand. So my dare is to get up here and talk about self-doubt. What I'm going to focus on, though, is not the self-doubt, but what I did about it. I graduated with a bachelor's science in electrical engineering, and I went to work at a really cool place, Martin Marietta, doing robotics and advanced controls, and that was the coolest job. So tenet number one is enlist the help and support of others. So about 2 or 3 weeks after I started, I also started graduate school working on my master's. So I show up, my first assignment is to derive the coordinate transformations for a 6th degree of freedom robot. I did not learn that in school. I had a lot of math, lots and lots and lots of math. I had no idea where to start. So I'm thinking, oh great, I've got a master, or a bachelor's in EE, and I don't know coordinate transformations. So I did what any smart person would do. I go to the applied mathematician and say, can you please help me? And so learning early on to enlist the support of others was very helpful. So Keith Grimben taught me quite a few things, and I grew in that robotics experience, and we had applied mathematicians, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, computer scientists, and we actually had 2 philosophy majors who were software gurus doing artificial intelligence. So, and it was a really incredible time. So I finished my master's degree. I took a year off and just worked full time, driving to Denver from Colorado Springs every day. That was kind of a light load. And then I started my PhD in electrical engineering. Then tenet number 2 came, which is rewrite the script. So I'm working with these really smart people. There were PhDs that had 5 years or more, engineers that had 20 years experience, and I compared myself to every single one of them and thought I should be equivalent. Well, that kind of doesn't feel like a smart thing to do, so I learned how to rewrite the script. So the script I came up with is, I am good enough. And it turns out our subconscious takes every single thing that we say to ourselves or somebody else says to us, and it puts it in the back of our mind, and then it makes our beliefs and attitudes align with those things being true. So if we have a message that's not very productive, that's not going to be helping us very much. So early on, I said, I am good enough, and I said it over and over and over again. I looked in the mirror and said it. I drove to Denver every day and said it. So that worked really well. So next, fast forward, I get my PhD. Dawn wants to leave Denver. That was a sad day. So we pick up and we move and worked elsewhere for a while. The next tenet for me is be clear on your purpose. When you're clear on your purpose, you don't really have time to have any other thoughts in your brain because you know what you're trying to do and you're all about the business of doing it. So I was at a startup company, and about 3 months into that, I was there doing my cool technical stuff. They came and asked me, the CEO said, I would like you to start a systems engineering group and lead it. And I'm thinking, okay, I really wanted to do technical things, and one of my fears was losing my technical acumen. So I thought about it for a while. There were so many really smart people, and no one was leading. And so I got clear on my purpose, which was to help that company succeed. And I knew they needed my contribution in that way. So I said yes. And that was a big leap for me. And it turns out I actually loved it. So the point is, stepping out and doing things differently, that allowed me in my clarity of serving that company and contributing in the way that I really felt they needed the most, I was able to put the little fear of the technical part aside and move forward. Then finally, my next startup company that I worked for, this final tenet, which is manage your stress and learn to be resilient. And you can learn to be resilient. At that startup company, from the top, they led in a very adversarial way. The CEO purposefully wanted everyone to have a little bit of fear that you could lose your job, so you would work harder. Well, there's a motivational place to work. Whew. So I learned very quickly, in addition to the other tenets that I had to manage my stress. I worked out anyway, but at times when I got busy, I wouldn't work out as much. Well, I learned that was a non-negotiable for me. So my little manage the stress and be resilient was exercise, eat well, keep your sense of humor as best you can, and learn to have a heart of gratitude. Because when I came from a place of gratitude about the opportunity I had, despite the circumstance, it let me reframe things pretty regularly. And again, I knew my subconscious was listening, so let's come up with something that's meaningful and is going to motivate me to go forward. So I did that, and that really gave me the survival kit for an environment that was really not my cup of tea. Then fast forward, 2005, I had the opportunity to show up here as part of Jacobs and lead the engineering organization. It was February 2005, and for anybody that doesn't remember that was 6 months before the first return to flight STS-114. I'm leading an engineering organization of close to 800 folks. I clearly did not have the background of flight hardware, so we're doing human space flight and talk about, wow, I could have a whole lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but okay, see step 2, put the self-doubt on the shelf, enlist the help of others. I had an amazing team, and so having that final piece of the manage the stress is what really put me in a place to lead effectively, build that team, learn from them, and have something to offer. So the part of the manage the stress part is the exercise, eat well, and have a little bit of sense of humor. Try to keep that. That's a good indicator, at least for myself. If I lose a sense of humor, I know I'm on the stress slope. And then have the heart of gratitude. So since we are all part of NASA, I cannot leave the stage without an acronym. That doesn't seem like that would be very good. So you have ERPM, that's enlist the support of others, rewrite the script, be clear on your purpose, and manage your stress. Now you have one more acronym, and since I love math, that was my favorite subject, it's E squared, H squared. And that is, for your stress part, exercise, eat well, keep a sense of humor, and have a heart of gratitude. So with that, my desire is for every single person in this room to have an awesome life. Thank you.
I'd like to take you on a journey for the next few minutes. It's a journey that will walk us through several vignettes from my life. While we're united on this journey together, I'll dare you to consider how you would have responded in each situation. and I'll challenge you to explore your own biases and behaviors. We'll start just a few short years ago when I was in second grade. Shouldn't be too hard for you to picture, my height hasn't changed too much. My teacher, Mrs. Ashland, would give us quickie quizzes each week to test our addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division skills. There were 5 quizzes in each category. If you got all the answers correct on that week's quiz, you got to put a gold star next to your name on the chart, and you moved on to the next quiz the following week. Mrs. Ashland would take anyone who successfully completed all 20 quizzes during the school year out for ice cream. As the school year progressed, it became clear that 3 of us would have a shot at that frozen dessert: Ben Grismore, Corey Curtis, and myself. The outcome of each week's quickie quiz was standard dinner table conversation at the McVeigh household. One evening, my mother asked, "Will you be the first to complete the quickie quiz challenge and get some ice cream?" I promptly replied, "Of course not, Mom. Ben and Corey will finish first because they're boys." Wow. My mother was quick and decisive in addressing that misconception. And I wonder why she has high blood pressure. But at 7 years old, I'd already accepted and absorbed and bought into that picture of gender bias. Fast forward a few years. The letters PhD now appear at the end of my name, and I'm sporting a sparkly diamond engagement ring from my fiance. I'm working with a career placement agency to prepare for job interviews. During one such session, I look at my new ring and I ask, should I wear this to the job interview or leave it at home? The advisor shrugs and says, it doesn't matter either way. No questions along those lines can be asked. They're all illegal. A few days later, I'm sitting across the lunch table from a member of the interview panel who points to my ring and asks, how does your husband feel about relocating to a new state for his wife's career? How would you have responded? Fast forward a few more years. Lisa, my best friend from high school, who by this point is Dr. Lisa Pellegrin, calls to tell me she's pregnant and expecting a baby girl in September. After I express my congratulations, she launches into a soapbox speech about how there will be no frilly dresses, no pink, and no Disney princesses allowed in her house. About 3 years later, I'm sitting on the couch in her living room in Nashville while Lisa cooks dinner in the kitchen beside me, and her daughter Maddie, wearing a pink frilly costume dress, is playing in the next room with her talking Disney princess castle. Each time Maddie plugs in the proper princess doll, or should I call them action figures, into the appropriate receptacle, she is rewarded with a snippet of song. As she inserts Snow White, I hear, I'm waiting for my prince to sweep me off my feet. Promptly followed by Dr. Pellegrin shouting from the kitchen, I love math, and I don't need a man to take care of me. How would you have responded? For the record, I responded by laughing hysterically. Fast forward a few more years. My colleagues and I are in the boss man's office debriefing a recent large meeting that just ended. The boss man asks my colleague, Paul Cotter, who was that guy sitting next to you? Paul responds with the appropriate name. Then the boss man turns to me and asks, and who was that girl sitting behind you? I rack my brain but draw a blank and say, I don't remember there being a 10-year-old with pigtails at the meeting. Paul chuckles, But the boss man looks confused, having missed my subtle point about the inequality of the terms guy and girl. Paul suggests, perhaps if we start calling him boss boy instead of boss man, he'll catch on. How would you have responded? Fast forward to almost present day. I'm managing a team of about 30 structural engineers. As is my habit at each weekly staff meeting, I ask if anyone has a safety moment to share. One team member pipes up and points out that there was a recent recall on fire extinguishers and explains how to determine if the one you own is on the list. Another team member speaks up and advises us all to check our vehicle's tire pressure, since there have been quite a bit of temperature fluctuations in the weather lately. Oh, and he adds, be sure to check your wife's vehicle too, because women never check their tire pressure. How would you have responded? I've shared these stories from my life in the hopes that you'll consider how you might respond in similar circumstances. Perhaps explore new possibilities and how to address these scenarios in the future, and then dare to make your voice heard. Oh, and by the way, for those who are still suffering in suspense since the second grade quickie quiz story, I'll close by confirming that Mrs. Ashland bought me my first ever double scoop ice cream cone. Thank you.
I'm going to go get a new job. I thought the hardest thing about today would be making sure everything I said wouldn't be inappropriate or whatever. Now I got to live with self-doubt up here. And yeah, not feeling too good about myself right now, Joy. So anyway, I'm Carol Weber, and I'm a director, believe it or not, at Lockheed Martin. And I head up the Orion's program for development under my cause, and I have been doing this job for 16 years. And it's not because no one else wants me. It's because, well, maybe that's it. But anyway, it is because I truly do love what I do, and my whole entire career has been about pushing the next generation of human spaceflight, and I wouldn't be here today if it was obviously easy, because we're still pushing that, right? Dare, unite, explore resonates with me because that is what I have believed since I left college. So I'll start. I thought we were limited to 5 minutes, but apparently not. So I'm just going to start with I was born at an early age. No. So when I graduated college, I went to Auburn, and I have to stop there and say, pretty thrilled to say that in working for Lockheed Martin, I wasn't sure I would live to see a woman take over as our CEO. And Marilyn Houston, if you haven't heard her speak or met her, she is phenomenal as a leader. She has a degree in business, which, as an engineer, I just kind of dismiss that as like, yeah, okay. But obviously, she has done quite a little bit better than myself in the company. But she is a phenomenal leader, and to rise to that level in a defense aerospace company like Lockheed Martin is pretty phenomenal. And in fact, if you look at all of our companies in aerospace, within the government and industry today, aerospace and defense has more women leaders than ever before, and leading a lot of these corporations, which is phenomenal. But not just that, it's the cultural spectrum, because it's not just about, well, I've never believed in glass ceilings. I believe they were cement, reinforced concrete, steel. There are all kinds of walls and barriers in life, right? And I think the message that we all talked about before we got up here is that life's about adapting yourself, because we all know that thing, you can't change others, you can only change yourself, and there's a reason for that. So anyway, I say that to say that Marilyn Houston is, one of the top 100 most influential people in the world, and I think that's phenomenal. I don't think it had anything to do with she graduated from University of Alabama, but I think because I went to Auburn, maybe that is the glass ceiling between her and me. I probably need to talk to her about that. Anyway, so I get out of college, and I am like ready. Like, just give me the toughest problem, and I am ready. And so I don't think the world was ready for me. Anyway, so I started out, my husband decides to go to grad school in Baltimore. Well, and at that time, Baltimore had this big manpower reduction with Westinghouse and some other big companies. So they advised me, you need to go to the smaller companies to look for a job. Well, there's all these seasoned engineers out there. So I don't know why I got interviews, but I did. Because I was then told, as we all in life have been told, right? If you believe what you're told and you accept it, and it's in the no category, we never do that, or it's impossible, then that defines your limit. And that's all I heard for 3 weeks. You're never going to find a job here. And I don't know what you think you're doing. So what are the options? Like, crawl in a circle, tell my dad, who's from Ireland, hey, I'm getting a job at the grocery store, because what's the point in looking for an engineering job? So anyway, so again, it goes back to that theme of adapt, right? So my technique of getting these interviews was stinking. And I decided that at that time, the mayor of Baltimore was revitalizing the city. They were doing the Inner Harbor project. That seemed to me a phenomenal leader, maybe someone that would listen to Carol. And so I decided the odds of getting an appointment were probably slim to none. So I just walked in. And the secretary said, do you have an appointment? I said, I'm here to see the mayor. I'm sure he'll be ready to talk to me. And I think that they were either so weirded out, I'm pretty sure there was no reason for her to let me by, because she was the bodyguard. And he was in there with 3 other guys, and I think it was just entertainment. I think it was just sheer entertainment, like, wow, really? Is that a Brooks Brothers suit? Can you afford that? No. And I couldn't. But anyway, so he listens, and I say, I came because you look like the inspirational leader of this city. I think that Inner Harbor project looks fabulous, and quite frankly, I've been everywhere, and everyone has told me I will never get a job in this city, and I think you're somebody who might be able to help me with that. And so they all laughed. And that's not a very good feeling when you're about 22, right? That was men laughing, and you're in your Brooks Brothers suit. So he picked up the phone, and voila, I had a job. And I went home like on a cloud. I was like, wow, I am unstoppable now. This is it. I have arrived. I'm going to turn Baltimore into Carol World. So I show up the next day in the same Brooks Brothers suit, because I only had one. And I walk in, and again, it's know your team, know your audience, know your environment, if you can. But this was a group of men, all white males except for one, and they and their fathers and their grandfathers had all worked here for the city of Baltimore. So it was crystal clear. I was like walking in the men's locker room at the high school or something. They had a special place for me to sit. So there were 2 signs over these 2 drafting boards. One said black kid, and the black kid sat there, and the other said white woman, and that was me. So I'm pretty sure you could tell I was white. But anyway, so that's what they did, and I thought, wow, okay, I can't tell my dad this story, because what is this? Like, I went to school at Auburn, Alabama, never seen anything like this. And so I was just like, yep, gonna suck it up, I can handle this. And so I made it through the first day. It was hard. They did not want to include me in anything. I just had to make things for myself to do, which is always a lot of fun, especially when you feel like your mission is to change the whole world and make Carol World happen. So anyway, the next day I came in, and I was resolved to make a difference and make some friendships, or try to connect. And they said, you know what, Carol, you seem cool. We want you to come to lunch today. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, of course. That's great. So we were walking down the street, and this is a group of like 30, 40 guys. And so I'm just in the middle of this group, and we're all walking down there, And we get into the restaurant, and it is a gentleman's club with very nice lady dancers. Yes, it was a strip club. And that's where we had our $5 lunch. And so I thought, this is just not going to go like I thought it was. So I got to figure out how to adapt here. And I would like to say that my first job was just the pinnacle of my career, but it was not. It was not the Beth Fisher. I love automobiles. No, I hated the city of Baltimore. I couldn't wait to get out of there. But I will confess to you that the one thing I learned in trying to adapt, and I did actually connect with these guys, and they actually did throw me a party, not at the strip club, when I left. But the thing that did it, the thing that connected, believe it or not, and no one should take this out of this room, but they had a belching contest after lunch. And I honestly have really never belched much in my life, but I won that day. I'm just saying, sometimes you have to do whatever it takes to get in there. Hey, Julie, am I going too far? No. She would let me just drive off a cliff and go, yes. Anyway, so fast forward to getting the heck out of there and going into the space program, which I thought was phenomenal. My father-in-law worked for Wernher von Braun and the Germans, and I thought that must be fantastic. And it's nothing to do with roads and carrying a gun and going to stripper bars for lunch. And so I thought, this is great. This is phenomenal. So within a few years, I am doing stuff, taking on any challenge, adapting myself to the different groups I have to be in, learning how to go out on the production floor, which if you haven't done that, you should. That's another world. And it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but you got to adapt. And so out there, I learned what it took to get along with those guys, which is basically never admit you're an engineer. That was the first thing. But anyway, so at some point, NASA has a shuttle flight, and some foam came off the external tank, and they said, we do not want the leading edge of the STS to have foam on it. So we want you, Carol, to lead this effort to replace that with an all-composite nose cone. And so just think about that. So the agency wants to fix something. Tommy Holloway says, make it happen. Of course, I'm going to jump, right? So I'm thrilled. I'm excited, get a team. And I'm really young in the industry at that point. Well, not much different than now, really. And so anyway, so I get this task, and it's hard. It's cryogenics. It's hot. It's the hottest tip, the highest loads. Of course, the loads group, they come up with loads I've never even heard of, even today on Orion. These were higher, some magical way. So anyway, it was a hard project, took years, and Tommy Holloway's question was, Carol, why did it take so long? And I just wanted to spit, but I didn't. But then it came to getting it into production, and I thought I was so smart to engage all these different guys. I went out in production, got supervisors, technicians, worked with them at night. I mean, I left no stone unturned except one. So I practiced putting this hardware on with third shift because I thought that's when it was going to go on. And I thought I was so smart to even get some second shift guys to help. What I forgot was that the schedule could change, and so it went on first shift. So going on a day where I'm suited up, and back then, luckily, it wasn't pencil skirts, or I would have been screwed. But it was long skirts down to near the ankle, long jackets, and I get a call that this composite nose cone on this 27.5-foot diameter tank, way up in final assembly, it moved the entire tank when the crew tried to shove it on the front end. It's a horrible mess. You better go out there. So I run out there, and now, mind you, this big tank, right, scaffolding like 30 feet up. And I'm not talking scaffolding with stairs. I'm talking the scaffolding that painters use with the big bars. Like, they seemed 20 feet apart at the time, but maybe they were 2. I don't know. Anyway, so the supervisor out there says, yeah, that's a piece of crap. That's what that is. And they should, whoever was dumb to do that, I said, oh, yeah, they were dumber than dirt. So what are the odds that I could go up there and talk to the crew, your amazing crew? And he goes, well, I mean, unless you got a way to climb that scaffolding, which I'm pretty sure you're not in that skirt of yours in your fancy-ass suit. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're not going to do that. So in life, right, we talk about adapting, learning from others. I learned from I Love Lucy that in that episode where she's stomping grapes, you could take a long flowing skirt, stuff it in your waistband, and create a very attractive pants outfit. So I did that, ditched my jacket, and I climbed that scaffolding, and there must have been about 100 technicians on the floor doing this. Yes. That was just the beginning. I was like, yeah, okay, the lady climbs the scaffold. That's pretty impressive. And so when I get up there, these guys are like, yeah, the whole thing moved. I said, well, I heard the building even rumbled. They said, oh, yeah, it was pretty bad. This is a piece of crap. I said, well, it looks like a piece of crap to me, too. I said, well, it's not surprising. And they said, why? And I said, because, if you think about it, right, these guys were first shift, and what I knew about them is they were very, very good at what they did, and they were very proud of what they did, but they're also very competitive. And so that just kind of came to mind, and I said, yeah, that the guys on the other shifts, and I don't remember who they were because I don't know anybody, because who am I? I said, they pretty much said you guys wouldn't be able to get that thing on. Let me tell you how fast that thing went on. So that was my first big program experience, and then when Tommy Holloway and my boss at the time, Dennis Steele, who has since passed away, asked me, how did you do that? I was like, yeah, I don't really think we want to talk about that. I'm not sure how legal that was at the time. But anyway, and really the essence of all the experiences and challenges I've had in my career boil down to stepping back from the problem and figuring out how to come at it differently. And that's really been part of, I think, what I've seen in other people who have done really well in their careers or made a difference. I mean, everybody here, we're all here to make a difference. And it doesn't matter what your job is, because I think that we learn through history, every person's role is pivotal in history, how the outcome turns out and how we solve problems. And it's that diversity of opinions. It's hard to always listen to others who are of a different mindset than yourself. But I have tried in my career to put that aside and try to really tune into what other people are trying to say, because everyone has a unique vantage point. Anyway, I'll wrap this up and just say probably the highlight of my career was in 2010. Mark remembers, it's a painful, and Julie, and a lot of people maybe in this room, it was a painful year because Orion and Constellation shuttle was ending, and the White House proposed canceling all of it. And so it was devastating for our community here, but it was, like in any challenge or moment in history where it's tough times, people come together. And I think back then we came together as a leadership team from industry and government and Congress, actually, to really spearhead and recover and change certain things about the program to bring it back. And that, again, was, if you don't think that people told us a million times it would never happen, it was impossible, we'd never be able to do it, they would only have to look today at our flight test in 2014. That was more than a flight test of Orion. It was really a test of human spirit to come back together and make something happen that everyone said would never happen. So anyway, that's my story, and living the glamorous life today, trying to make it happen. And thank you very much.
I don't even know if I should get up here. Yeesh. This is an amazing group of ladies. Do I have time, Monica? All right. Just making sure. Wow. an honor to be here. I think a lot of the stories that you've heard already, I just think of my own life and how every single one of them, I could probably think of an example that was very similar. And I've taken home so many lessons learned from today, but I want to share a couple of my own, if you don't mind, as well. And I think they just sort of capitalize on everything you said. I'll try not to be as impolitically correct, but I have a hard time with that myself, so you're just going to have to deal with me. All right, and part of the reason is because of, oh, I'm doing the clicking, I forgot. I have to do this technical stuff. You guys know who I am, straight first name, but you might not know where I'm from. This is a picture with an 800 millimeter lens. From the International Space Station. Maybe you know, but I can give you a hint because, you know, it's a quiz. Maybe a 400 millimeter lens would give you that picture, or a 180, or maybe just a straight up lens would give you that picture, which is the real view of what we look out at the window. So now maybe you know where I'm from. Boston, right? I grew up right outside of Boston. I talk fast. I'm impolitically correct. I say the F word every now and then, like all those guys who do the Dunkin' Donuts commercials. But I loved growing up in Massachusetts, I think just because it was just a melting pot, and I learned so much about people and life while I was there. And I came in second a couple times when I was a swimmer. I was a swimmer for most of my life. I think the things that defined me when I was a kid was I had long hair. We were the Indian family, the only Indian family in Needham, Massachusetts, so everybody knew us as the Indian swimmers with long hair. My brother, even my brother who had a beard, I think at 13, and my sister and I who had long hair, so we were the long-haired Indian kids who swam. And so what are you gonna do when you grow up? Life is full of challenges, right? And my dad immigrated from India, and he was a doctor, went to medical school there, and came to the United States. And we had animals. My mom's from Ohio. I was born in Ohio, so I do claim Ohio as part of my good Slovenian background, the split half of me who eats sausages and samosas at the same time. But my mom loved animals, and I loved animals too. My dad was a doctor, thinking I want to be a veterinarian, and why would I ever want to go and do anything different than what I knew right here in Massachusetts, where there's the mecca of schools and universities. I applied to a bunch of them, and to my chagrin, surprise, as a 17-year-old kid, I was devastated when I didn't get into the schools that I thought I had to go to be a veterinarian. And so my big brother, remember the guy with the beard at 13, recommended that I apply to the same school that he went to. And he said, you'd like it. You're a girl and you like camping, so maybe you might like it. So I ended up going to the Naval Academy and getting all my hair cut off. All those dreams, those wonderful dreams of being a veterinarian sort of flushed down the toilet. So I go to this wonderful school, just really not knowing what the heck I'm getting myself into. I've never marched. I'm generally a liberal from Massachusetts, right? That's how I grew up, and I get into this very conservative, uniformed place, and I'm like, what am I doing here, except for the fact that I love the teamwork. And I'm class of, older than a lot of you here, maybe younger than some, class of 87, and I wanted to finish this school with this class of 87. I was doing nothing else but going to finish this, regardless of how horrible it was. And I got to like it okay. I was a swimmer and a runner there, and I got to do some fun stuff. One of them was climbing this monument you see on the right-hand side called Herndon. I didn't realize this. I think I was just clueless in life. I didn't realize that we were the 7th class of women to go through the Naval Academy. I'm like, whatever. Maybe it's 10-1. I'm going to find a husband here, one way or the other. So it's a good bet. I'm joking. I did marry somebody from there, but I don't even really want to talk about that at times. But Herndon was a big thing in my life at this time, right? This is the end of plebe year. After that, you are actually considered a real person. So they grease up this pole, and they dig a big trench around it, put a whole bunch of water in there, and you're supposed to climb it. And if you could see, I'm almost at the top, which was pretty cool.
I don't think any other women have been that high up to that time. But it's one of the things we talked about is adapting and becoming part of the team. I was part of my little group, my little class, my little company, and they knew that I was an athlete. I was a swimmer, I was a runner while I was there, and people actually helped me, which was very, very surprising. Now, I don't think I was gonna get the hat that's on top, and I think that would have been pushing it a little too much. And I have a feeling that since then there has been, and I think I was only there because I was pretty skinny, and it was easy to lift me up, actually. But in reality, it was a huge deal to actually get that high. That's why I put that picture up there. It was a big deal to finish plebe year. It was a big deal to be accepted by your classmates and your teammates and your coworkers when you have in yourself a big doubt about even what the heck you're doing. I also remember that year, there was a big transition in my life from that year to the end of the Naval Academy, when in the beginning, that year we were all getting excited because we're going to see a movie about seals. And like I said, I came from Massachusetts, the ocean is there. I'm like, wow, this is interesting, and I love animals, remember that? And I was like, wow, we're going to see a movie about seals. I don't really know how this has to do with the Navy, but I don't mind. I'm just going to join in and sit down and be happy. And then you see these guys and all their gear and their guns and their helmet. I'm like, what is this? I thought this was a movie about seals. Well, it wasn't a movie about seals. I came to find out, and I just kept that piece of information quiet and to myself. And you guys don't have to admit that to other people. Fast forward, I'm in the military a little while later, and there was like I'm with my husband, who is also a helicopter pilot like myself, and we're at home, and there was like a PBS special about seals, and I'm like, yes, this is about seals, and it happened to be about animals. That was okay. That was good too. That was all right. That was fine. So at the Naval Academy, at the end of it, we choose what we're going to do in our military career by our class rank. I was pretty smart in high school. I pretty much got all A's, but Needham, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston, is pretty competitive. Like I was mentioning about schools earlier when I was just deciding where to go. I was in the middle of the Naval Academy, so just somewhere in the middle. I was a swimmer, like I mentioned. I really wanted to be a diving officer, but there was only one diving officer billet for women at the time. And Top Gun had came out. So I was like, well, there's a second chance here. I could maybe be a pilot. I could maybe be Tom Cruise, and that's okay. So I ended up picking naval aviation and flew. And so I only mention that because I'm trying to talk about a couple little things that wasn't always the first choice in my mind, but I felt like you just gotta get on with what you get and make the best of it, and somehow things sort of miraculously work out, doors open up. I never knew what it was gonna be like to fly a helicopter, because I got helicopters, I didn't get jets. I did end up going to dive school as a side because I was a little bit persistent, and I was waiting for flight school, and I had the opportunity to go to scuba school if I passed a physical fitness test. I'll remind you, I was a runner and I was a swimmer. I was in pretty good shape back then. Actually, right before I went to the Naval Academy, I was fearing that I would never get back to Boston to run the Boston Marathon, which sort of ran right by our town. And I was mowing the lawn, sort of whining about this at one point in time. And my mom, when I was a senior in high school, my mom goes, well, what's the problem? What's wrong with you? And I said, I'm going to the military like a dramatic 17-year-old girl, and I'm never going to be able to come back here and run this race. And at the time, we used to have bandits where people just jumped in. And so she started the car. She said, get in the car, let's go, stop crying, get going. And she drove me out to Hopkinton, dropped me off. Back in the day, you guys know, some of you don't remember this, with a quarter, and said, call me if you have a problem. Otherwise, I'll meet you halfway. And so I just started running, and I met her halfway, and I was about to bag out, and some guy came up and said, come on, let's go. And so I finished that marathon with this guy. I don't know how I did it. First time I ever had a space blanket on, so I guess that was a calling, right? But I got a space blanket when I finished this thing. But that's just an example of, I think, my parents, my mother and my father. I am so unbelievably blessed with really great family. So, sorry, they're pretty cool. I remember when my dad, when we were young, when we'd go to church, he's Hindu, as a matter of fact, so I think this sort of covers some of these other parts of my life that I think I took for granted when I was growing up. We'd go to church, and I was the youngest of 3 of us, so my mom would be going up to communion with my brother and sister, and I'd sit there and my dad would open the Bhagavad Gita like he was getting away with something and start reading me stuff and telling me about Hinduism, and I was like, you know what, Dad, it's the same darn thing. Let's read it a little bit, tell me a little bit more about this. It's just, Jesus in one pair of clothes and Jesus in another pair of clothes. This is me as a little kid, so I didn't know any difference, and that's sort of how I grew up thinking about people and religion. It's just a perspective. It doesn't just different clothes when you live one place or different clothes when you live another place. And I come to find out I think I was pretty right when I was a little kid. So that was sort of cool. Anyway, this slide here has a bunch of pictures of things that mean a lot in my life. I just mentioned my parents, which are really cool. My family and, of course, animals, going back to the very beginning if I wanted to be a veterinarian. I think they're sort of the truest things in life and really show you and lead you to lessons learned in life that, the things that I missed when I was in space, the ocean, rain, the wind on your face, those are the things that are pretty darn important in life. And so I say all that just for perspective, right? I think life is a lot about perspective. All of the stories we heard today are just about perspective, how you interpret yourself, how you interpret others, how you take your next step forward in life to be successful. It's all a matter of perspective. And that led me miraculously here. I went to test pilot school. I had to apply. I only applied once, which was just a miracle. I think that's just a timing thing. A lot of life is about timing. A lot of friends of mine have applied to test pilot school a couple times because it was the cycle that they needed your aircraft to be tested. So I absolutely realized that my getting into test pilot school was just a matter of good timing. Likewise, getting into NASA, again, a matter of good timing when we needed a lot of astronauts here for the shuttle program and building the International Space Station. I think everyone who's an astronaut would say, I don't know how it happened, and I'm not asking any questions, because we just apply. Part of that, I'll mention in in a second, is a couple lessons learned. I'm going to leave you with a couple lessons learned because I don't want to stress out Monica too much and keep talking, because I could tell you a gazillion fun stories that absolutely apply. But a couple lessons learned here, and about getting to the astronaut office, is getting to the starting line. The person who organizes the Boston Marathon, Dave McGilvery, a great friend, he said this at one point in time to me. He said, you just got to get to the starting line. And it's so true about so many things in life. If you sit back and hinder yourself and don't take that step to just get there, you're never going to get there. So as a helicopter pilot, I come to Johnson Space Center as a test pilot under instruction, and we go up to 4 South, and there we are, and John Young is briefing us and telling us all about space travel, and me and Doug Wheelock are sitting in the back because we're the 2 helicopter pilots in our class, and all these salivating jet pilots are in the front just, I can't wait, I'm going to be an astronaut, and me and Wheels are like, okay, whatever, blah, 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 blah. He's talking away, and then he starts talking about landing on the moon, and he's talking about flying something that's like a helicopter thing to land on the moon, and Doug and I look at each other, and we're like, hey, we already got that skill, forget these other guys. And that was, I think, the first time in my life that it dawned on me, like, wow, I could actually do this job. I have some of the skill set that these people have. And I just never had that door opened, and I never looked at it from that perspective. And then I said, okay, now what do I got to do? I should get my master's degree. I got to get on it. I got to get to the starting line. I got to make myself the best that I can be to apply. Just apply. Just get to the starting line. And like I said already, it's sort of a miracle how people get to the astronaut office, but somehow I got selected. Good timing. The right person at the right time, who knows, but I had to get to the starting line to even, have a foot in the race. One other lesson learned, I think we've heard this a couple times already. don't forget what you learned in kindergarten. Have a sense of humor. This is, by the way, if you don't know what we're doing here, there's a couple little traditions that go on before Soyuz launch. One of them is, of course, the Kazakh traditions and culture. And I already mentioned culture is huge. I am so blessed to have been part of the International Space Station program and learned so many different things from our different international partners, and appreciative. And then also, you look a little bit like a fool, but that's okay. And be able to make fun of yourself, and be nice to other people, share with other people, particularly lessons learned. These are huge things that, it all goes back to don't forget what you learned in kindergarten, and keep that in the back of your mind. And lastly, from my dad, who used to kill us when we were growing up in New England in the fall days and go for these long nature drives to look at the tree foliage. I think my brother used to stick his head out the window because he couldn't stand it anymore while we were driving around looking at the autumn leaves. But my dad used to always say, don't forget to stop and look at the foliage. And it sounds like sort of a silly thing, but this is a journey where we're going. And we're learning so much on the way that if you don't stop and take a look and make an assessment of where we are. I mean, was thinking back to end of 2014. I was on the Anchorage when EFT-1 came down and landed, and I was just like, where in the world, this is the best job ever. There is a spacecraft that just came back from space and bloop, it just plopped down right in front of us and we're gonna go pick it up. I mean, this is amazing. Maybe I'm a little too old and I won't be able to get to fly on Orion and be part of the Artemis program as an astronaut, but I'm hoping that I'm at least part of it, and this journey to get there is just incredible. So, thank you.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you. I want to start by thanking Monica Foley for taking this idea and turning it into reality and giving us the blessing of hearing from these incredible leaders today. Thank you, Monica, for everything you did to do this. You may have noticed if you had a chance to come in and look at the pictures in the lobby, but that is another great idea because it recognizes not just the leaders of this center, but people who make a difference in all different locations, and some of them we see every day, but it's great to recognize them. So I thought that was also very, very moving. Just a couple things, because these guys did an awesome job. I think it's great that you get a chance to focus on the leaders that make our mission possible. These just happen to be women. But I want to say a couple of things. I've been really blessed and been influenced by women in my life. Most of them have been family members, including a sister that was an engineer, a sister that was a nurse, a wife that was a computer science major, a mom who was a pianist. But I continue to be amazed at how I think clueless is the right word, clueless to what the challenges are that women had to endure that I did not have to endure. Sometimes I wonder how I could not have been could have been more observant. But I really appreciate the stories and the heartfelt experiences that you described, and also how you dealt with it, right? And incredible resiliency, which really shows why you're here. Also, in my 40-year career, I have had 2 women supervisors, 2, and the last was Ellen. So I think it's a great testament to those of you on the stage and your great abilities and leadership qualities that have changed that paradigm, changed this agency, changed the world, that now women can have mentors and leaders that they can look up to and look for guidance. So I want to thank you for that. So we have the last thing I would like to do is we want to recognize these women specifically with giving them roses. This is something that if you ever been to Moscow, and as part of International Women's Day, which is actually the first time I've ever celebrated International Women's Day, was in Moscow. There was more vodka involved than we're doing that today, but they make a very big deal of it, and flowers are a big part of that. So we would like to recognize these leaders with a flower. So we're going to just go into the front. All right, well, thanks again for coming. Thanks for tuning in, those of you that were tied in. Thanks again, Monica. And so join us in the lobby for the gifts, the refreshment gifts. Thank you very much.